So Sarvopanishado Gavo Dugda Gopalanandana Parto Vatsa Shudir Bhokta Dugdam Gitam Ritam Mahat. The Gita Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, the essence of all the Upanishads, is just like a cow. And Lord Krishna, who is famous as a cowherd boy, is milking the cow. Arjuna is just like a calf, and learned scholars and pure devotees are to drink the nectarine milk of Bhagavad Gita. Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam, Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva, Eko Mantras Tasya Namani Jani, Karmapyekam Tasya Devasya Seva. And so Shankaracharya himself says, let there be one Shastra, the Devaki Putra Gitam, what was sung by the son of Devaki, and one God, the son of Devaki, and one mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra, and one work, Karmapyekam, Tasya Devasya Seva, one service to Sri Krishna. Obhagyana Tamanandasya, Jnananjana Shalakaya, Chakshur Unmilitem, Jena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I'm playing with the computer. Just a moment. Trying to find my notes. So we're reading from the 15th chapter of the Gita, and Krishna says, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdvamulam Adashakam Ashvatam Prakuravyayam Chandangsi Jasya Purnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. So this is a very strange and curious verse. Krishna's explaining here a kind of a metaphor. It's a strange metaphor. He says there's a banyan tree. It has its roots upward and its branches down. So it's a very strange thing to say, because you never see a tree that has its roots upward. So you have to think about this verse. It's kind of deep. What does it mean? The roots are upward and the branches are down. Roots are upward and the branches are down. Well, you see trees like this all the time, don't you? If you look in the water and you see the reflection of a tree, normally the tree is like that with the branches up there. But if you look in the reflection, you'll see it upside down. So Srila Prabhupada liked to call the Bhagavad Gita as it is, meaning we take the literal meaning of the words of the Gita to be true. But in this case, we're being offered a metaphor. And it's clear that Krishna is not saying this world is a tree. It's a metaphor. He's saying the world is something like a tree that's upside down. So where do you see this sort of tree in reality? You see that as a reflection. If you see a tree reflected in water, it will have the roots up and the branches down. So what Krishna is telling us here is this world is a kind of perverted reflection of reality. We're not looking at the complete reality because we're invested in this material world. We're invested in something that's temporal. We're not seeing the eternal reality. Uh, Srila Prabhupada comments, there's no ready experience in this world of a tree situated with its branches down and its roots upward, but there is such a thing. That tree can be found beside a reservoir of water. We can see that the trees on the bank reflect upon the water with their branches down and roots up. In other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire, just as a tree's reflection is situated on water. Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of this material existence must know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. So the idea of the tree, it's an interesting metaphor in more than one sense. Because on the one hand, he's talking about the material world. But then the next thing he says is the leaves are the Vedic hymns. So normally, if you think about our situation in this material world, you don't immediately consider that that has to do with the Vedas. You think that the Vedas are really meant for helping us to get out of this material world. But Krishna here is saying that the leaves of the tree are the hymns of the Vedas. So this tree metaphor, it actually has a few different applications. One, you can think of this material world as a kind of a banyan tree. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a banyan tree. There's a banyan tree in India that is supposed to be the largest tree in the world. And it has a circumference of something like 5 miles. And it's such a big tree that you can walk underneath it. And as you're walking underneath it, and the trunks of the tree are rising up from the ground and turning into branches, and the branches are coming down and forming roots and going into the earth and coming back up as branches. As you walk through that massive tree, it appears that you're in a forest. So this is something of the idea that the metaphor is expressing here. That this tree, it's vast. It's really difficult to parse out where does it begin and where does it end. So one way to look at this is to see it as the material world with Satyaloka at the top of the universe, where the root of the tree is in the form of the four-headed Brahma. And that area is composed of Mahad Tattva, which is the first sprout coming from the seed of Pradhan. And the tree of the material world has all these different metaphorical branches because they're spreading out in all directions, going down into Svar, Bhuva, and Bhuloka in the form of Devas, Gandharvas, Kinnaras, Asuras, Yakshas, Rakshasas, men, animal, birds, insects, fish, and trees. So this is something like the Matrix, uh, where there's this vast entangling situation that we take to be reality. So this is like the banyan tree. But there's another thing at work in this metaphor, and that is a tree as representing the tree of knowledge. So on the one side, there's a description of cosmic existence in the Vedantic image of the Ashwata tree. And this tree has no beginning or end that we can perceive in space or time. It's an eternal and imperishable growth or matrix. And the real form of it cannot be perceived by us here in this material world where we're embodied souls stuck within a material body. So its original source can be said to be above. Now, the word above is kind of tricky because it's not that spirituality is somehow up there in the north. It doesn't have a particular location. In fact, spirituality is everywhere. It's within and without. Even the word above is kind of metaphorical, but it means beyond time and the eternal, beyond space. So the origin of this entangling banyan tree of material existence is beyond time and space. It's beyond the three modes of material nature. But why does he say that the hymns of the Vedas are compared to its leaves? Well, there's another aspect of this metaphor, as I was saying. And the idea is, take the tree of material existence and just put that over there for the moment. And think about this metaphor of a tree as referring to the tree of knowledge. So in the ancient Christian mythology, and also in its Hermetic traditions and esoteric religions that flow from Judaism, for example, the Kabbalah, and Christian mysticism as well. The tree of knowledge is important. According to the mythology, the original man and the original woman are in the Garden of Eden, and there's a tree there called the tree of knowledge. And God tells them, don't eat of this tree. You can have anything else you like. But of course, Eve is tempted by evil incarnate in the form of the serpent. Eat this apple, eat this fruit from the tree of knowledge. And she does, and so does Adam. And by eating of the tree of knowledge, of course, they fall down into this material world. So there's something there about divine love avoiding knowledge, that knowledge itself has to do with doubt and analysis. And so too much doubt and analysis can lead to a downfall in the Christian tradition. And also in the Bhakti tradition, we know that real bhakti or divine love is above analysis by gyan or knowledge, so that we have to finish with the tree of knowledge in order to develop pure devotional service or bhakti or divine love or dedication. Because as long as we're thirsty for the fruits of the tree of knowledge, we won't be able to have complete and true faith. So that Krishna here is comparing the hymns of the Vedas to the leaves of the knowledge tree. And that's also interesting because if you think about knowledge and knowing and the problem of trying to understand this universe, or who am I, or what is the nature of reality, or even applied science. This tree of knowledge has infinite branches and specialties, and you can get lost in one. I remember when I was younger, I was thinking about going back to university, and I thought, what shall I study? I'm interested in astronomy. But as I looked at astronomy, I found that it doesn't have to do with a cosmological understanding of the universe, who we are, or how the universe got here, or where it's going. It's really more about hydrogen and carbon and helium and how different elements evolve from the explosion of the Big Bang, say. And I thought, no, this is superficial. And I thought, well, I'd like to study philosophy. But I found that, as Srila Sridhar Maharaj likes to say, Tarko Pratishta Shrutayo Vibhina, that Tarka is inconclusive. Any good argument has a counter argument. So that's kind of the nature of philosophy. So all these different branches of the knowledge tree tend to end up in the minutiae of a particular specialty. So if you're interested in biology, then maybe you'll be interested in microbiological switches or something like that. Or if you're interested in philosophy, you get into analytical linguistics. And the further you go down the tree into the branches, the farther away you get from the origin of knowledge. So why is Krishna telling this to Arjuna? Well, his point is something like, he's telling Arjuna something like, look, you're interested in the Vedas. So if you think it's desirable to live in this world on strict Vedic principles, then I can explain it to you. The world is like a banyan tree of unlimited extension, with the roots above and the branches below, and the leaves being the Vedic hymns. So where do all these Vedic hymns lead you? They lead you into further karmic entanglement within this tree of material existence. The tree of knowledge and the tree of material existence they're related in the sense that the more you get involved in trying to understand the matrix, the more you become involved in living within that tree and analyzing the tree itself, the farther away you get from the real purpose of life, which is to go beyond the tree. Something like that. Adhas chodvam prasrityas tasya shaka guna pravridha vishaya pravata adhas chamulani anus santatani karmanu bandini manushaloke. So Krishna continues. He says, the branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. The tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. So it's interesting the metaphor of the banyan tree, because in the case of the banyan tree, the branches create roots, and the roots spread downwards. And Krishna says that represents our determination to put down roots in this material world and enjoy the fruits of karma. So if the upper and lower branches represent the creatures of celestial and animal kingdoms, then this tendency towards becoming more involved in this material world just becomes more acute. Narupam asyeka tato palabhyate nanto tachadir nacha sampratishta ashvatam enam suviruda mulam asanga shastrena dridhena chitva. Krishna says the real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. Because just like my example at the beginning, the tree in India, the giant banyan tree, you can Google it. When you're standing inside that tree, you can't understand where is the root, really. Where does it begin? Where does it end? So the real form of this root of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. And then he says, Tatapadam tat parimargita vyam jasmin gata na nivartanti bhuya tam eva chadyam purusham prapadye jata pravriti prashrita purani. So prapadye means surrender. He says, with determination, you can cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Therefore, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began, and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. So I don't know if the metaphor here is a little bit mixed, but you get the idea. If this tree itself, with all its roots and branches and leaves and entangling situations, is really nothing more than a kind of a mirage, a reflection on the lake water, then you can't really cut it down. It's not that you can take a sharp axe and cut it down. But Krishna says, using the sharp axe, asanga shastrena, by the weapon of detachment, it should be felled. But the idea is, through a more advanced understanding of reality, you can penetrate the illusion of this Ashwata tree, especially through surrender to Krishna. So this is a very powerful metaphor. In the Kabbalah, for example, there's a thing called the tree of life. And that's another aspect of this metaphor. And that is the idea of this tree. It can be seen as representing the entire material existence, or the entire biological existence of embodied beings within this world. Or you can think of it as really referring to the human society, its quest for knowledge, and the tree of knowledge in that sense. But it's also a metaphor for the individual and our personal struggle for knowledge in this world. And so in the Kabbalah, their mystic understanding of the tree of knowledge, as they call it, it really refers to the different energy centers in the body, the different chakras. But with all these different knowledge systems, in a way, are being sort of criticized by Krishna as being superficial. Arjuna, from the very beginning, is telling Krishna, this war is not really very Vedic. I want to do the right thing. I want to do what is correct dharma for me. And then Krishna criticizes the Vedas in the second chapter. He says, Vedavada Rita Parta. He says, the Vedas are mostly talking about karma and how to correct your karma, how to do good karma, and how to avoid bad karma. That's the purpose of so much of the Vedic hymns. But this is not really helpful to you because it keeps you engaged in this world tree. The Vedic hymns themselves are like the leaves. He also compares he says, don't be fooled by the flowery language of the Vedas. So even as devotees, we become fascinated by so many aspects of Vedic culture, from Vedic medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, the Dhanurveda, how to properly string a bow and fire an arrow, or Chanakya Pandit's take on Vedic politics, the Vedic politics in the Mahabharata, Vedic astrology. There's some Vedic food. There's so many different aspects of Vedic culture, which are fascinating because Vedic culture is civilized culture. But Krishna is telling Arjuna here, you need to go beyond ordinary human civilization and try for something higher. And that's the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is not to ratify the karmic tendencies of the Vedas. So then he comes to this verse, which is a very nice verse. He says, Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha Adhyatma nitya vinivrita kama dvandvaya vimukta shukadukha sangyar gachanti amudha param avyayam cha. He says, those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, and who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. And one of the problems of reading the Bhagavad Gita also is that we're always looking for some ethical instruction. How should we act? What should we do? But Krishna is not very helpful in that respect, in the sense that he doesn't tell us when you get up in the morning, you need to do this, and after this, do that. He doesn't give specific instructions in that way, because the Bhagavad Gita it's Upanishadic. It's dealing in sort of generalities, and it leaves it to us to work out, what does that mean in our practical life? What does it mean to be devoid of attachment, for example? I saw someone the other day complaining that they're attached to their children, and they're thinking, this is not good, because if I'm attached to my children, how can I be spiritual? My children are so beautiful. They're so cute. Everything that they do is lovely. It doesn't matter if they're being violent or if they're screaming or crying or wetting their diapers. It's all charming. So I find that being charmed by my children makes me more attached to this material world. What should I do? Should I abandon them? Well, of course, in the Mahabharata, there's the story of Shakuntala, who was the daughter of Menaka and Vishwamrita Muni. Vishwamrita Muni was a Kshatriya who wanted to be a Brahmin. And so he went to the forest to perform severe austerities as a brahmachari and went on for some time until the gods, headed by Indra, became concerned that this man is becoming very powerful through his austerities. So he went to one of his dancing girls, Menaka. So she's a heavenly dancing girl. She's the most beautiful young woman that you could possibly imagine. And Indra sends her down to where Vishwamrita Muni is meditating on the banks of the Ganges. And he says, destroy his brahmachari. And so she does. She enchants him with her feminine wiles. And Vishwamrita Muni is seduced. And soon Menaka gets with child, and she has a lovely daughter, Shakuntala. But because her work in the material world of seducing Vishwamrita is finished, she doesn't want the daughter, and she leaves the daughter behind, Shakuntala. And Vishwamrita, when he's presented with the daughter, he says, no, I'm a brahmachari. I can't get involved. And so Shakuntala grows up in the forest. So is this to tell us that we should be like that? If we have children, we should abandon them because somehow they're involving us in this material world. That's not the message. Krishna's saying, be detached. His point is, you should understand who you are. You're not strictly a man or a woman or an Indian or an American or a German or Ukrainian or Spanish. Your eternal soul, your Atma. You're involved in this world. And he also tells Arjuna, you have to do your duty, but don't be attached to your duty. So it's a fine line. How do you raise children and at the same time remain detached? This is a question for your guru. You have to ask your guru, and maybe he'll help you with that. What does it mean by detachment? Well, I think also it means avoiding extreme attachment. He says the delusion of pride, nirmana moha, jita sangha dosha. These are not good qualities. They will not help you in your spiritual life. But I saw in my time in the ashram men who would have a problem with their wife, and then they'd come to the ashram and say, okay, I'm going to be a brahmachari. And we would give them some service. And after some time, they would fall in love again with a different woman, sometimes even from the ashram, and then go away and have another relationship. And 2 or 3 years later, we'd see the same Prabhu coming back to the ashram, maybe not our ashram, maybe in a different place. But this is called bhoga tyag, where you enjoy something and then you renounce it. And this is immature renunciation, immature non-attachment. Real non-attachment can be seen, for example, in the example of Ramananda Roy, who's working with dancing girls, but he's not interested in the dancing girls. He's interested in a high ideal. So just exactly how we work the problem of attachment and detachment becomes very personal. Nirmana moha jita sangadosha adhyatma nitya vinivrita kama. He says, absorbed in reflecting on Paramatma, dvandvar vimukta, sukha dukkha sangyar, gachantya mudha padam avyayam tat. Renouncing material desire, free of dualities of happiness and distress, and without bewilderment, they attain that goal. So, how can we become free from pride? This is always everywhere in the teachings of Krishna and also in the teachings of Sri Chaitanya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells us, Trinada Pisunichena Terora Pisahishnuna. It's very, very difficult to be humble. It's very difficult to be tolerant. I saw now in England, they have a new king. And the first act of the king was to sign some document. And as he's signing the document on his desk, there's a pen that's too close to him. And he signals to his servant, move that pen. And if you watch the video, you can see the arrogance of the king. With such arrogance, he's telling his servant, move that pen. And the servant moves the pen maybe 6 inches to the right. So, is that the kind of humility that we want? I'm a servant of Krishna. I'm very special. You need to serve me. Or shall we try to take as examples our superior acharyas like Srila Govinda Maharaj, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he didn't have a gold watch. He didn't have gold teeth. In fact, I would sometimes watch him eat, and his whole mouth would move in and out. And I thought, this looks like some strange symptom of ecstasy, because we read in the Shastra, and the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it says that there are these very unusual symptoms of ecstasy where the body becomes distorted. And I thought, is this a symptom of ecstasy? And later, I could understand that Srila Sridhar Maharaj had no teeth. He was in his 90s, and one by one, his teeth had left him. Miguel de Cervantes in Don Quixote, he mentions that teeth are like jewels. They're very difficult to replace. They're like gemstones. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he had no teeth. He did not have gold teeth or porcelain teeth. He had no teeth. He lived in poverty. He didn't have a gold watch. He didn't have expensive shoes or expensive cloth. Very, very late in his life. I remember one day they bought him a chair. It was a nice chair from Calcutta. And it was almost impossible to get up the stairs because the stairs to his veranda were very narrow and enclosed by walls. But somehow they got it upstairs and they set up the chair. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj did not want to sit in it. He had this old wooden chair that he liked. And they said, well, why don't you want to sit there? And he said, we like the old things. I've used my old chair for so many years. I'm very comfortable there. We like the old and familiar things. So Srila Maharaj, he was not a man for luxury. Govinda Maharaj either. Later on in his life, to give service to the devotees, he would accept things, but he wasn't interested in luxury and things like that. So a surrendered soul should be free from pride. And we become free from pride by showing respect to others. We become free. Affection for wife and children, it doesn't mean that you don't show affection or that affection doesn't exist, but it means you're conscious of the nature of your own Atma and you're conscious of the Paramatma. So I was thinking, we talk a lot about Krishna consciousness and especially about Krishna, 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 Krishna. But don't forget the part about consciousness. So be conscious. Be conscious of who you are. Be conscious of the other people around you. And try to adopt respect and tolerance. Then you can penetrate into the meaning of the Hare Krishna mantra and become free from attachment, as is advocated in this verse. So I think I spoke for about an hour. I'm sorry if I just speak like this, but it's kind of my job. As a teacher, I don't like to lecture. I teach in a school. And what I like to do is give something to the students and let them work on it as a problem or a project. But sometimes I'm asked. So I was asked by Rajasundari about a year ago, I think it was in November. I was asked if I could give a weekly talk on the Bhagavad Gita. And I said, well, what's the format? She said, well, we have 3 speakers. There's Madhusudana Maharaj, and who I just got to see in Italy. He's a wonderful, wonderful man and a beautiful old soul and an inspiration to us all. And there's also Devashish from England. And between the 3 of you, each one can take 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. And I thought, well, all right, which 6 chapters do you want me to do? And she said, well, let's consult with everyone. And they said, no, you decide. So I said, all right, I'll take the first 6 chapters because I'm thinking this will go quickly. The first chapter is really introduction. The second chapter needs maybe 2 talks because it's long. And then I'll finish the whole thing in maybe 6 or 7 weeks. And here we are a year later, and there's Dandi Maharaj in an undisclosed location in the east, Hare Krishna Maharaj and Govinda Vilas Das de Colombia, Suvasini in Wexford, Vrindavan Chandra there in Odessa, Slava Ukraini, and Anantashesh in España, and Nirupama and Gauranataraj. Obrigado. And I'm just astonished and amazed that we have this little group of international thinkers and pundits, Suvashini there in Wexford, who are tuning in and listening almost 1 year later. After 6 chapters, I talked to Madhusudana Maharaj, and he said, no, it's okay, you continue. I'm very busy with a lot of projects. You're doing a good job. So big shout out to Madhusudana Maharaj for encouraging me, and I hope he's doing well in Latvia and Ireland and England and Italy. Russia and Ukraine and all the places where he's preaching. And so from the 6th chapter, we just continued this. And I went really fast to the 14th chapter. This 15th chapter about the banyan tree, that always has me thinking, what is that supposed to mean? The banyan tree, it's a metaphor. You know, in the Kabbalah, they have the tree of life. In the Bible, there's the tree of knowledge. The ancient Norse mythology that has something to do with the Celtics and the Vikings, they had this world tree they called Yggdrasil, which goes from the lower planetary systems to the higher planetary systems. But the Vedic teachings are the oldest. Are they connected? We think so, probably. So what Krishna is telling us here in the Bhagavad Gita about the tree, it's about entanglement. He's saying, don't get too entangled in the material world. Don't get too entangled in the world of knowledge. Try to come to surrender. And through that, understand you as Atma and Paramatma. And in this way, cultivate detachment. That doesn't mean that when your children are crying, you say, you are just a lump of flesh and bone, and I don't know you. This is not a good approach. It's been tried. I've known devotees who tried that. They put their children on an airplane and sent them to the Gurukul in India, and then came back 5 years later. Don't do that. Take care of your children. They love you. You love them. If you don't love anything in this world, how can you understand divine love? How can you be bhakti, bhakti, bhakti? I'm a lover of Krishna. I love, 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 but then hate everybody. That doesn't make good sense, right? Anyways, so it's good to see all of you. Peace and love, blessings, dandavats, Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Stotra Sacha Sri Sripad Bhakti Raksha Jai.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Bhakti Vrinda
Jai
Ki.
Shri Bhakti Mahayogi Prabhu. Jai.
You know, when people do that, I take it because it goes to Sridhar Maharaj, I think. If I have anything interesting to say, I learned it from Goswami Maharaj or Govinda Maharaj or Sridhar Maharaj or Prabhupada, or after they taught me something, I thought about it for a long, long time and tried to use it. And some things don't work and some things do. So, you know, my humble suggestion to you is love each other. Try not to be envious of the other devotees. When you see the other devotees doing great things, don't think, ew, I don't like him. You know, try to be happy. I had a strange experience a few years ago when one of my students came to class and she said, teacher, I can't come tomorrow. I said, really? You can't come to class tomorrow? Why not? And she said, well, I'm going to Paris. And I thought, now normally I would be envious and I would think, what? How is it possible that you go to Paris and I can't go? But when she told me that, I looked at her, she's like 13 years old. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. One of my students is going to go to Paris. That's really nice. Good luck. Have a good time. You know, come back from there and, you know, tell me how it was. And she gave me something. I'll show you. she came back from Paris and she gave me this. And I was like, well, thank you so much. But I was surprised because it was one of the first times in my life where I wasn't envious of somebody else doing something. And I'm a very envious person. Hare Krishna, Nirupa, right? Then I thought, no, a teacher is happy when the student does something good. Just like mommy is happy when she sees her son does something nice. So that's okay. You can be happy for other people, you know. False prestige, enviousness, illusion, that's not so good. So as you get older, maybe you can learn to distinguish and understand by self-analysis. You can understand, now I'm being envious, it's not good. Now I'm being angry, not good. Somebody asked me for a spiritual exercise, and I told them, because I learned this when I went to Petersburg to see Dandi Maharaj. I was going through some airport and I found myself becoming impatient with all the security checks and the passport checks and everything that they do. I found myself becoming impatient and angry. But then I looked at the person across from me and I thought, that's their job. Like, why? There's no point in being angry. I'm only hurting myself. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make an experiment. I'm going to try not to get angry. Even mentally, if I find myself mentally getting angry, I'm going to hold that in check. And I'll see if I can do that for 24 hours. And I did. I was so proud of myself. But then I realized, oh, that's false pride. Leave it out of sight. I'll try to do it for another 24 hours. And I kept it going for 3 weeks. I went to Petersburg. I saw Dandi Maharaj. I went to Moscow. I saw Vidut Maharaj. I went to Ukraine. I did the Veda life. I went to Thailand, saw Goswami Maharaj. And then after that, we went to Angkor Wat, right? But somewhere in Angkor Wat, I broke. I couldn't keep it going. It was, I don't know, something about the hotel or a motorcycle. And I couldn't continue my renunciation of anger. But I thought it was a good exercise. I think it helped me. So if you're looking for like an ethical exercise to do, you can try that. Try to become free from anger, even for 24 hours. And you'll find it helps you chant Hare Krishna. It will make you feel better. It's impossible. I mentioned to somebody, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it mentions 64 different forms of devotional service. And someone looked at me and said, there's 64? Oh, how is it possible? It doesn't mean you have to do all 64. Pariksit Maharaj became perfect by hearing, just by hearing the Bhagavatam. Shukadev, by speaking the Bhagavatam. Prahlad Maharaj, by prayer. So you don't have to do all 64. You can pick one and try to be good at that. My point is, you don't have to be an expert pujari, an expert cook, an expert preacher, an expert knower of everything, and a super japa man and a super kirtan man who plays the best drum. Pick one, but in all of that, try to be friends with your other devotees. Try to be humble, and I tell you this as a failed devotee. I'm not good at any of those things. I'm only here telling you this because Braja Sundari asked me, can you please speak on the Bhagavad Gita? And then Dandi Maharaj is listening, so I have to say something. All right. Well, I'm going to go and thank you all. It's so good to see you. It makes me very happy. And I'll continue for another week. Next week, we'll look at more of the 15th chapter. Okay? Gaur Premanandi.
Hare Krishna, Jai, Mahayogi Prabhu, Ki Jai. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mahayogi Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Bye-bye.
So next week we will continue with the 15th chapter, yes?
Yeah, we're going to
Okay.
continue talking about the
Well-
Ashwata tree.
Mhm.
The next time you see a banyan tree, think about it.
Хорошо, детям from Moldova, хорошо. Тогда
Дандават. Харе Кришна, Махарадж. Примите мои поклоны, пожалуйста. Харе
Да.
Кришна.
Джай Гурупама.
Джай Нирупама. Харе Кришна, Нирупама. Соскучилась по вам всем. Окей, буду со всеми прощаться. Харе Кришна. Please accept my Dandavats pranams. See you next week. Увидимся на следующей неделе. Очень рада вас увидеть. Махарадж, примите, пожалуйста, мои поклоны. Дандавата. Харе Кришна. Харе Кришна, Сувасин. Дандаватс.